The worst president in history's billion-dollar campaign is failing. Trump is behind in the polls, losing in places he should win, and barely holding on everywhere else. It's looking good, right? Wrong. This isn't over. We're fighting against Donald Trump. We know he'll lie, cheat, suppress the vote, stoke racial hate and economic chaos to win. Trump is counting on you to relax, to stop fighting, to think this election is over. It's not over until his enablers are defeated. We can't take anything for granted. Register, volunteer, get your absentee ballot, vote early, stay in this fight. Your vote and your hard work make all the difference because you know the choice we face, America or Trump. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Join Milwaukee Film virtually for the Minority Health Film Festival, presented by the Froedtert and the Medical College of Wisconsin Health Network, taking place now through September 24th. Watch 50 films plus conversations about the health and well-being of families, communities, and institutions. Tickets are on sale now at mkefilm.org/MHFF. The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, covering topics from local, national, and everything in between. It may not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. That's The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live. Call in 414-395-0484. There's liberal news, there's conservative news, and then there's the truth. Join us for the truth. Good morning, welcome to the program. Today is Thursday, September 10th, 2020. So I'm sure you've heard of, the plague that is happening right now in America with 90 wildfires that are burning across some 10 or 11 states, and Donald Trump doesn't really seem to care about that. But we come to find out that Trump doesn't care about a lot of things, including the health and safety of the American people. And as this changed world has grown on all of us, you have to think, well, what did the president know? Is he really dumb? Because it's easier for us if we just dismiss him as he's just an idiot. He doesn't know. It's almost like we still are looking to give him a level of sympathy. So not everybody. There's most people that don't like Donald Trump. It's more than just dislike, they hate him. But then there's everybody else who's trying to maintain a sense of optimism, I guess, if that even exists anymore. And maybe they minimize it by saying, well, he doesn't know. He's like a child. And I've seen all the memes and all the, the cartoon sketches of him wearing a gigantic diaper. Then they had that huge, that caricature balloon of him, this orange baby wearing a diaper. Because I think that makes it a little bit easier for some people to think he's dumb and he doesn't know any better. Well, the leaked audio, which I have a couple of clips of, shows that the president knew. This is in February, before we had our first coronavirus death in this country. He's having an interview with Bob Woodward for a book. And I don't understand at what part of the dialogue did Donald Trump think it was okay to disclose this information to Bob Woodward. And of course, this information has been leaked. And Trump is admitting on this tape that he knows that the coronavirus is nasty stuff, it's deadly stuff. He says his own words. Now, this is before we had 10, 15, 20,000 cases in New York. This is before we had this mad dash to get ventilators because we thought at one point in time we were going to need 30 million of them in this country. So before the coronavirus took hold in the United States, Donald Trump knew how bad it was. A president who we could easily understand and say he doesn't understand science. Science is not his thing. His supporters also don't understand science. The bit of the conversation that I have, I'm going to play for you in a second. Donald Trump knew full well how bad the coronavirus was before it got to its epidemic levels here in this country, before we lost almost 200,000 people, yet he chose to downplay it publicly. Some time ago, when I was, trying to cast this incredible shadow of doubts over Donald Trump and his presidency, I said, and maybe I was being facetious, this was probably early 2017, middle of 2017. I said that Donald Trump at some point is just going to kill people. And it sounded ridiculous because at that point, we didn't think that an American president would completely disregard with reckless abandon the American people. You didn't think that. Nobody thought that. No one knew it would get as bad as it is. And if you did know that, then you should have played the lottery because clearly you are clairvoyant. Nobody knew. But I said, as things continue, because they were getting worse and worse by the day. Jeff Sessions was, quoting Confederates, and when he was Attorney General, Jeff Sessions ends up getting fired because he didn't want to protect Donald Trump during the Russia investigation. Things were just getting progressively worse. And they're going to continue to get worse because he needs the negative attention that comes from the outrageousness of his policy proposals. It's really how he encapsulated and romanticized a portion of the American electorate. No more illegal immigrants. We're going to ban the Muslims from coming here. We're going to build a wall. We're going to do all the black athletes are sons of bitches. So he had to go further and further and further. And the further you go, you're going to end up in one or two places. You're going to end up in pure fascism, which it is. And I got a little evidence of that as well, because I have to continue to provide this information because people still don't believe it. Trump is hitting us over the head with fascism. And some people are like, well, he's just not very political. So it either ends up in fascism or people are going to die. And I really don't like making the comparisons and the parallels to Nazi Germany. But first you had fascism, then people died. It's not death camps here. It's not concentration camps. It's not this mechanized, automated system of death that the Nazis perfected intentionally and on purpose. We don't have that in America. But we do have the death camp of the coronavirus, which the president knew was going to be a weapon of mass destruction.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. People don't realize we lose 25,000, 30,000 people a year here. This is more deadly. This is 5 per, this is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%, so this is deadly stuff.
And then there's this other thing. Race has dominated our political conversations. I mean, it's always played a role in our political conversations, but not like it is now. And then you see the variety of scenarios that have always kept Black people on edge and also in check. The point of racial violence and for police officers to shoot a man in the back or shoot him in the face or choke him out, or when we have to continuously hear Black men from different parts of the country on different days of the week scream, "I can't breathe," and then it's broadcast and we see it and it's on the news and there's protests, and then it seems to amount to nothing. And I say that because the same scenario will happen again. Next time it happens, it's going to happen in your town. So it's very consistent. That acts as a way to keep the slave broken, to keep Black people in check. No justice for police officers that commit heinous crimes, homicides, and murders. That says, okay, Blacks, you're okay as long as you stay in line, right? Donald Trump has taken that, the anxiety that people will have, and now everybody's starting to feel the anxiety because you just don't know when the next racial incident is going to take place. And when people are going to burn a little bit, when they're going to riot a little bit, when they're going to loot a little bit, you just don't know. So it has everybody on edge. And people that weren't paying attention, when Black people were being very, very gentle and very, very passive in talking about our struggle, whether it be in old slave spiritual songs that are designed to, make you feel emotional about our condition, or in our music and our art and our culture, every bit of important Black cinema and music, everything that America has stolen and gravitated toward and given us awards for has been a covert message talking about the disparate treatment of Black people. But for some reason that went over people's heads. And even in our comedy, some of our greatest Black comedians, their overtones are about race, but America just laughed at that. Now here we are. Not to overlook such a very important section of American culture and life, Donald Trump has got his thoughts and feelings on race as well. Take a listen to this one.
Do you have any sense that privilege has isolated and put you in a cave to a certain extent, as it put me and I think lots of white privileged people in a cave, and that we have to work our way out of it to understand the anger and the pain particularly Black people feel in this country?
No, you really drank the Kool-Aid, didn't you? You listened to you. Wow. No, I don't feel that at all.
I'm so glad that portion of the conversation was captured, because what Bob Woodward did, what he said, is he took a portion of the conversation that Black people have been having with our well-meaning white friends, not our racist friends, not the Republican on the job, no, even our white friends that like Black people and they like Black music and they might even go to a Black nightclub, or the white people that have dated and had sex with somebody Black, those people. When we try to have a matter of fact, staying on point message conversation with our well-meaning white friends, the white folks that we think that we can trust, about white privilege, what Trump said is what they say. Oh, you drank the Kool-Aid. And then they go into, you guys have all this affirmative action. And well, sure, when I could lose my job if there's a more qualified Black applicant, and Blacks get to go to college for free, and they go on and on and on and on. But instead of Bob Woodward bringing up that part of the racial conversation in America, it used to be just Black people, and that was the response that we often got. And now I'm glad to know that the president feels the exact same way, because before you didn't really know specifically where he was, but to think that, and Bob Woodward does a very, very good job of explaining what the white privilege is. He was like, my dad was a lawyer and a judge, and can't imagine all the opportunities that Bob Woodward, not to mention Donald Trump, had that they didn't even ask for. And it wasn't just the money, it wasn't just the, this force field of success that sometimes come with the zip code in which you live and with the opportunities that your parents and your grandparents were just bestowed with because of their skin color in this country. It's not just that. It's this attitude that comes along with it, to think that, your life is hard as a white person. You don't have any white privilege. You had to work hard for everything you have. And look, I'm not taking that away from any white person, because I do know that there are some white people who have very difficult lives. But the color of their skin is not a reason why their lives are difficult, and that is the difference. Their lives are difficult because they screwed up. They made mistakes. Mental illness issues, maybe abuse that they have suffered, but their skin color is not something they can blame for their failures in life, because Black people have all those other things too. We have to deal with abuse by the police, abuse in society, mental illness, substance abuse, health disparities. We die from the coronavirus more than anybody else. So we still have all of that, plus we're Black. And then when we try and explain the Black part, our history and our heritage and how that can have a negative impact on our lives, that's when the white people say, you've drank the Kool-Aid. Some white people think it's a compliment. when they say, oh, Sherwin, you're not really black. Or you're not like the others. They think that they're actually being nice because they don't want to admit, like Donald Trump just did, he admitted it, essentially, that being black is difficult. And I say that because I've asked the question before. I ask a lot of questions. Good morning, everybody. By the way, I ask my white friends or non-white friends, would you trade would you want to be black? Would you trade places with a black person in this country? And for those white people that want to sidestep the issue of race by saying, well, the blacks have it easy. You get all this free stuff and you have affirmative action. So let's say we do have all that. We have all that free stuff. There's not a white person on this planet that would want to trade places with an African American. Because even if you're poor and destitute and uneducated and white, it's still better than being black and educated. And so they'll say things like, well, sure, I'd love to be black. And now I love those conversations because you bring it up to them. Hey, so-and-so, would you ever trade places with a black person? Yeah, I totally would. I'd love to trade places with Jay-Z. So you don't get to pick Jay-Z because if you were going to be a black person for a day, for a week, for a year, for the rest of your life, you're not going to be Jay-Z. You're going to be Jerome, who's doing 25 to life. Like you're not going to be you're not going to be Oprah. Sure, when I would love to be Oprah Winfrey for a day. But you're not going to be that kind of black person. They always use the best example. When you ask them if they would ever trade places with a black person, they always want to be the most successful one. Because maybe if you asked a white person, or a black person rather, which white person they would want to be, we'd say Bill Gates, but we won't be Bill Gates. We'll probably be some redneck hillbilly with no teeth living in West Virginia. So now we know how the president feels about the issue of race and white privilege, and he doesn't even acknowledge it. And that's the one thing that has taught me more than maybe anything else, because the way we think about society and culture and race has evolved, and it's evolved very rapidly. And then for me, trying to understand why white people could be so miserably wrong in understanding the issue of race and understanding the issue of privilege, because privilege in and of itself is an offensive term. Privilege. It means that you just have something that you didn't work for, you didn't earn, you get it. Maybe it's genetic, maybe you've been indoctrinated by God, you have this privilege. And when you tell people they have this thing that they never worked for, that's offensive, because everybody wants to think that they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. And that term, when it started in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, was supposed to be a joke. Like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is impossible. No one is able to do it because you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And we have literally taken that term, that colloquialism, and turned it into something you're supposed to accomplish. You can't accomplish that. Good morning, Justin. Justin says the show Woke on Hulu did an awesome job of addressing the "oh, you're not black" compliment. I'll have to watch that, Justin. Thank you. Francine Hale said, oh, look at it. Francine Hale says, good morning, Sherman. Well, I'm sorry, Francine, but Sherman has left the chat. I don't even know what to say to that. Vanessa Garrett, good morning to you and to everybody else as well. Emma Stamps, good morning to you too. So in helping because having the privilege conversation is difficult. And so now I'm seeing white people like argue with each other about their white privilege. Oh yeah, whitey, you have white privilege. But it's when white people are trying to get each other to see their white privilege, it's a real interesting conversation. I don't chime in, I just watch. But a way in which because I need to be able to understand privilege too, to have a conversation about it. And I almost wish we had a different word, white privilege. Because a poor white person will tell you real quick, I've got it rough. I know you do. Not saying you're not going to have it rough, not saying your life is going to be perfect, but the color of your skin has not aided to your misery and to your troubles. But for me to better understand privilege so I can have an intelligent conversation about it, I understand my own privilege, because male privilege is real. Now I'm black too, so that takes away some of the male privilege. But all in all, if someone said to me, Sherwin, and I'd say yes, or as Francine Hale would say, Sherman, Would you trade places with a woman? Hell no. No, and I love women. You can call me a chauvinist and call me a misogynist. I've been called every name under the sun. I really have. But because I have more opportunity as a man, it is my obligation that I take willingly to help women and to protect them from other men that want to use their male privilege to subjugate women. And the reason why I would never trade places with a woman is because I know how bad men can be. That's why. There's a song, I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but I guess it's an example. Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. I said it like an old middle-aged white guy. Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion have a rap song. It's a duo. And it's an acronym for a particular part of a woman's body. And it made a song about it. And there was some debate that was happening on social media because that's where all the important debates go on. And it was fascinating to watch because there were some that believed the song, in their opinion, was this symbol of women's sexual power and prowess and their sexual liberation. No, it's not. But the thing about male privilege that exists, and I got to explore every aspect of male privilege so I can help better understand and communicate to white people about their privilege, is you want to make the marginalized, the subjugated, think that they have liberties and freedoms. They need to perceive that they have this level of independence when all they're doing is echoing the fact that they're still an underclass. So if you listen to the lyrics of WAP, and please be careful if you do, it's essentially women talking about how they will be abused sexually, but then getting some form of power from it. If you listen to it too hard, you will be able to at some point figure out that one or both of those women have been sexually abused and they made a song about it, but then it gets turned into their sexual liberation. It's horrible. And then people have had this conversation about how bad and how negatively influential rap music is. There's no 11 or 12-year-old little girl that needs to have a sense of pride because of how wet her vagina gets. You know what that means? It means she needs to go to the gyno. But we're not having that conversation today. But to thoroughly understand my position as a man is to know that I would not want to be a woman. And for the white people that say they totally would trade places with somebody Black because they think it's so easy and they think that we have it good, or they say stereotypical things, like there's a lot of stereotypes and mysticism that surrounds Black people and Black culture. You guys remember Miss Cleo? She was the psychic lady. You would call the 900 number and Miss Cleo would tell you things. You know, that's a stereotype that Black women are like voodoo priestesses and can predict the future. They're like these mystical witches. That's a stereotype. And there are some people who have been so indoctrinated into the stereotype of Black people that they think it's cute and they think it's fun. And then there's even some white folks like Rachel Dolezal, we totally forgot about her, who went on to be like the director of the NAACP, and I think she was in Seattle, somewhere in Washington State, and just decided that she, as a white woman, was going to identify as Black. That I just, because she could decide that she just was going to lose her white identity and assume the identity of a Black person without having the history and the legacy and the horror stories and the broken branches in her family tree that have been snapped, crackle, and popped by the legacy of slavery. She could just choose to be the fun parts, the sassy parts, the diva parts of being a Black woman, and not have to deal with all of the pain that's associated with it. That's disgusting. Good morning, Orvana Harris. L.A. Thomas says, WAP. Don't get me started on that song. There is pushback on the word privilege, so sometimes I say benefit, but it doesn't have the same meaning. I don't know what word is suitable to have because privilege is just, it's a negative connotation to privilege. These are the privileged few. Immediately when you hear about privilege, you feel a particular way about it, at least I do. Well, look at these are the privileged, these are the homes of the privileged. It is a privilege for you to drive a car, as an example. These are privileges. These either you worked really, really hard to get the privilege or they were just given to you. It almost seems like it's a bit of a misnomer. But if we can't get to the root of that question, Justin Firminich, one of those racial frauds just happened again right here in Wisconsin. Justin, I saw that you posted that article. Well, even Elizabeth Warren, I don't want to say to a lesser extent because maybe there was some ignorance involved. I really don't know, but I know that there's a consistency in white people finding, and this ancestry.com has got y'all nuts. You find out you're 0.5% black and all of a sudden you grow an afro and wear a dashiki. Well, guess what, Sherwin? I took an Ancestry 23andMe DNA test and I'm 0.000000000000.13%, 0.00 black. And now I can go in blackface because technically I'm just being one of my ancestors. Got y'all going nuts over that. And because we have maybe diminished the superior status of being white, because now if you're white, you've got all this privilege and you're guilty and racism is your fault, and you're if you're white and a Republican and a conservative, clearly you're a racist. We've maybe hurt the public image of whiteness in America to where some white people want to find whatever bit of minority blood that they can find, which probably came about through rape, and they want to exploit that, saying, well, I'm not all the way white, Sherwin. Ooh, I love this one. Don't you love this one? I'm not white, Sherwin, I'm Italian. Good Lord. Yeah, Christopher Columbus was Italian as well, and he was probably one of the worst pillagers, rapists, and colonizers of them all, so go figure. The Italians have an interesting story, and I guess the Irish do too, or at least comparatively, because when they came to the United States, other Eurocentric cultures didn't like the Southern Europeans and didn't like the Irish, but the English and the Irish, like that whole part of Europe, the Anglos, they've had their own bit of trouble that goes back long before they were concerned about black people. So they've been beating each other up in the Highlands of Scotland and raping each other's women and doing very, very terrible things on that little island of Great Britain. So they had those tensions, and some of those tensions were brought here. And just Europeans in general, they've always gone to war with one another, and it had nothing to do with black people. Like they had no hatred for Africans because Africa was still the tree of life. They didn't hate Africans yet. It was only when we became labor and chattel and property that they have an issue with us. But there's a guy that I've known for 30 years who, on one of the posts in the forum Facebook group, said, the Irish had it worse than the blacks. And this is a guy that I played high school football with. We were freshmen at Browndale High School. In fact, I met him in middle school. And I ended my friendship with him because at this point, with where we are in the world and where we are with our politics and with all of the information that is available and all the damn historical documents that we still have to have on black people in the civil rights struggle and getting into good trouble and have to analyze the lives of Dr. Martin Luther King and John Lewis over and over again. And we're mostly doing that. Like you see more racially sensitive information and documentaries and PBS specials because we did not teach white people about this when they were in school, because we should have, because they would grow up to not hate black people. But you have to have a certain amount of hatred toward black people to justify marginalizing black people. You gotta have a criminal justice system to keep some black people under the thumb so more white people are free from criminal records and criminal prosecution so white people can get the jobs. So you can't teach white people that they're equal, that we're all the same, that we're all Americans. You can't teach them that because then they will have a sense of fairness. And so you have all these documentaries and all this stuff. And if at this point you still say the Irish had it as bad or worse than the black people, we can't be friends. We can't be. We can get along when it comes to every other topic. We can cheer for the same sports team. Hell, we can even play on the same sports team. But we can't be friends because at some point, our friendship will come down to how you feel about race and how you understand it. Because I need a friend that's going to understand and not thoroughly be able to understand, but empathize when I have a racial moment, and I'm going to have them because I've had them my entire life. And if you don't get that, if you're going to minimize what happened to me, I could be pulled over by the police. I could get called the N-word. Who knows what it could be? It could be another one of these death threats that I've gotten where the white supremacists after the Kenosha shooting published my goddamn address on the internet. You want to talk about an unsettling feeling. And if I want to talk to you about that thing that happens to me, that happens to so many Black people every single day, every single second in this country, and you say, well, you know, sure, when the Irish had it worse than you, we can't be friends. I don't do fake friends. The pandemic going on, you mess around and hang out with one of your fake friends, they're going to give you the coronavirus and they're going to die. So I can't do fake friends. You shouldn't do fake friends either. L.A. Thomas, the Irish had it worse than the Blacks. They always say that, like they want to, like, oh, I totally can get it. If you're Irish in the year 2020, you know nothing about, other than the stories from your grandma, what the Irish went through until the Irish decided, you know what, let's not be Irish anymore. Let's just be white people. Let's change our names, because white people, again, that's a privilege to come over from Ellis Island. And if your name sounded too ethnic, if it sounded too German, sounded too Jewish, sounded too Italian, they just changed their names. They adopted a new identity. And you guys think about that for a second? That's what white privilege is. It means that I don't want to be known as Italian or German or Irish or Jewish. I want to be known as white. Because if you're white in America, that's where the opportunity is. They didn't necessarily come to America to maintain their cultures from Europe. They wanted to shed that skin. They wanted new identities. That's why people come to the New World, because maybe you were persecuted because of your religion, because of your ethnicity, because of your culture in Europe. They didn't want to bring that over to the New World. So they were going to change their names to sound more, I don't know, English or Anglo, not as ethnic, so they could just become white people. And ultimately, if you come to this country and you just assume a white identity, which isn't even real, it's not real, then a part of a white identity in America, unlike any other place in the world, is to separate yourself from Black people and to keep Black people separate from you. That's the white identity. And they would change their names. They would do a disrespect and a disservice to the history of their families in Europe so they could come to America and just fit in. There were some immigrant families, I've been having these conversations my whole life. Grandparents, I'm the age where, so my friends I grew up with, and I grew up in the 80s and in the 90s, their grandparents came from Ellis Island, okay? So their parents, of the kids I grew up with, their parents were first generation Americans. It'll be interesting when you have these conversations with your friends, whether we were in middle school or high school, that their grandparents came from this country that these white kids didn't even care. But the parents that came from Germany, as an example, didn't even want their children who were American citizens who were born in America, because remember, the grandparents came over from Ellis Island, they wouldn't even teach their children German, or they wouldn't even teach their children Italian, because they didn't want them to have to deal with being an immigrant. And they were almost forbidden for speaking the native language at home because they wanted their kids to shed that skin of their European ancestry so they could fit in. And it's very convenient, but it also shows the power of whiteness to where you have to have a collective amnesia of who you are and where you're from so you can just fit in this country. Here's the problem. Black people can't do that. We try. God knows we try. Sometimes Black people think by voting Republican and being conservative and adopting the bootstrap philosophy that they can shed their Black skin. Oh no, honey. You might as well just be Afro wearing, having a dashiki with one of those picks with a fist in the handle. They'll never let you forget, even if you're well-meaning, even if you speak so well, and sure, when you're so articulate. Even if you do all of those things, that's not going to save you when a cop pulls you over. White people are able to do that, and then because they try and indoctrinate us the way they themselves were indoctrinated. Well, sure, if you don't act ghetto, and if you pull up your pants, and you talk normal and you get an education, no, that works for white people. I am doomed by the beauty of my melanin in my skin. And because I am doomed by it, that is why I love it, because now everything in life becomes a challenge. And then lo and behold, a black person becomes successful. We can look at the white folks and be like, what the hell is your problem? How are you white and poor? I don't do that though. I don't do I told you so. I don't do that. But it's a really complicated subject. But I said all that to say this. To understand privilege, I have to understand my own, that there are things that I can do and therefore take for granted as a man that women can't do. And therefore, I wouldn't want to be a woman. While there are some white people that they would love to trade places with Oprah or Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry's success came from him entertaining folks by being a drag queen. Don't minimize that. Don't marginalize the fact that Medea plays into a long stereotype of the effeminate black man. The sexuality of black men, our sexual prowess, is to be feared, because when a black person and a white person make a third person, they're making another black person. That the power and strength of black phenotypic genetic expression, I'm gonna send you to Google on that one, is so powerful that you must be fearful of all of these black men that may impregnate white women. And so it's a part of our cultural lexicon to make black men more effeminate, to put them in dresses and to call them comedy. Now, we also have a very, very long conversation about, homophobia and all those other things. But even a generation before me, a guy named Flip Wilson, he had a character named Geraldine. He dressed up as a woman. A lot of black comedians have played roles where they dress up as women because it's just funny, because you take all the masculinity out of this man, that if he exhibits his masculinity, he becomes a threat. Because white men have always known this. And I know this because I grew up with white boys that then became white men. You can have a conversation about interracial dating at your own risk. The stereotype is, boy, oh boy, do those black women get angry when they see one of their black men dating a white woman. First of all, we got a problem with that because it just automatically assumes that every black man is the property of a black woman, but that goes along with another stereotype, the strong black woman. Think of another race of woman that's considered strong. Boy, that's a strong Asian woman. Doesn't even make any sense. Boy, that's a strong white woman. If somebody says, wow, Sherwin, there goes a strong white woman, I'm assuming she's a bodybuilder. But when you hear strong black woman, you're like, oh yeah, she's dealt with abuse and she still can be reasonably successful. That's not a positive thing. Strong black woman means we know your life is screwed up and you're not dead. Wow, you must be strong. Black women can't even play the damsel in distress to get rescued. Anyways, what I come to find out is that white men hate it way more than black women do when it comes to interracial dating, relationships, marriages, because they know. White men know what they do to white women. They know that they didn't allow their women to vote until 1920, but black men got the right to vote first. White men know they control corporate America and control the economy. They know they pay their wives and their daughters and their mothers less than they make. They know that. The white women, for a period of time, American culture was a white woman she was a domestic. She couldn't work. She couldn't leave the house. She raised the kids. She had no dreams. She had no aspirations. And the classes they used to teach, like they would indoctrinate these white women. You're going to have home economics class. You're going to be a domestic engineer. That's a career. You go to college not to get a BS degree, not to get a BA degree, to get an MRS degree. And I didn't know that until I heard it from a white woman who was told the only reason why she needs to go to college is to find a man. Because no man would want a really smart and intelligent woman. And so when you take a look at how white men have shaped this culture, not just for Black people, but also for white women. It makes a lot of sense that at one point in time, Black men who have been marginalized and subjugated and killed, and white women who have been marginalized, subjugated, abused, and raped would see Black men as their allies. You can't have that, because then you're going to have a whole bunch of biracial people in the country and a whole bunch of white women that don't know how to take care of Black hair. Sahara Ali, good morning. So true, and many immigrants, including my Pakistani father, whom didn't let me visit his country, speak his language, and wanted me to change my last name. So I got a very good friend who lives in Minneapolis, known her for, I don't know, 20, 25 years. And she is of Indian descent. Her father was a doctor, which go figure. First generation Americans, her parents are, and then they had her, and they wanted her. She had two choices in life, only two choices. And this is she's of East Indian descent. Beautiful girl. Oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. She marries an Indian man, or she marries a white man. Anything else is wholly unacceptable. You marry an Indian man, or as a consolation prize, they would be okay with her marrying a white man. Well, she rebelled against it. I hope she's not listening, because she's going to be pissed. She's probably listening. I won't say your name. And so she rebelled against that because she enjoyed Black people. Because if you're a dark-skinned Indian, people don't really know where to put you, because you're not Black at all, because you're different culture, different history, different heritage. But you're dark skinned. And so white America's like, you're peculiar. And so she just loves Black people and Black culture and Black music, and then had a baby by a Black guy and literally got disowned by her family. I'm sorry if I'm putting your business out there, but that's just an example. How many family members and people do you know that have been disowned because of who they love? And it's not just a gay thing. Before there was that, because until, I don't know, gay marriage became constitutional via the Supreme Court somewhere around 2012, gay men and women were marrying the opposite sex because it's just easier that way. Because if they came out to their family, especially if you have a religious background, the church would disown the whole family. It was a whole thing. I mean, the church still does. The church doesn't really want to know, or doesn't want to admit where it is on gay, because there's a lot of church members and also pastors that are gay. That's a whole thing. We got to talk about that at some point. The pedophilia that exists in the church. And I don't know if does the church attract pedophiles, or is it this cultural legacy that exists where the altar boys, and I don't know if there are altar girls, are sexually abused? And then I don't know, but I know there's the pre-sexual abuse scandal here, Boston and Philadelphia, some of the worst, most egregious cases in the entire country, and barely a single prosecution. So that's a whole thing. So the church doesn't really know where it is when it comes to the gay stuff. But people would disown members of their family if they dated out of their race. Because some of those families with their antiquated view are thinking, we didn't come over here from Italy or Ireland or Latvia or wherever they come from and change our name and get rid of our culture and blend into America for you to marry or have a child with a Black person. We're going to disown you because you are ruining all of this work that we did to get you, this next generation, to be an American. And here you are sleeping with one of those mongrels. That's a very real and very American conversation. But at the same time, there are many of us that believe that America is supposed to be that. We're supposed to be this melting pot where people that otherwise never would have had access to one another can grow up in the same neighborhood, can go to school together, can work together, can build together, and can create together. America itself, the experiment, was the original internet. Because you now could come to a place and interact with people that you could not have interacted when you were just at home in your home country. You can come here and experience a particular type of diversity that didn't exist. And it's interesting, even though we may frown upon diversity, people crave it. Diversity is an addiction. Where do you think rock and roll music came from? Where do you think minstrel shows came from? That white society was so goddamn repressed, they put on blackface because they could finally be free to express themselves and express their crazy attitudes. Now, they were doing it at our expense. Diversity is addiction because it feels good. That's why people love to travel. Those of you that travel, you get the travel bug because you're like, my town sucks. Like, there's other stuff in the world. There's other people in the world. And the more you travel, the more you see one thing. We're all the same. We're all the same. Good morning, Douglas Dickerson. He says, ooh, you telling too much truth today. Feelings are being hurt. The truth must be told. And I don't say what I say to hurt anybody's feelings. Remember, I'm in my safe space. I'm at home. So if your feelings are getting hurt, well, you've been invited into my home, so you can only blame yourself. These are conversations that we probably should have had a long time ago, and I'm thankful and disappointed at the same time that the conversations about race, the detailed ones that we have, people didn't have sooner. Like if somebody's 60 years old, I never knew that. It's like, oh, that's too bad. Or when people have the ultimate conflict, the generational conflict you're going to have with your parents. And every child does it because your world is different than that of your parents. It's totally different. You may have similarities with them. You might be the kind of person that like smoked weed with your parents. Totally weird to me because I don't want to see either of my parents high, let alone participate in getting high with them. It'd be a goddamn nightmare. My mother told the story once. I hope she's not listening. Everybody's going to be mad at me, so what the hell? I guess you have no fear when the Trump supporters put your address on the internet. You just go all out. When my parents were dating in the late 60s, early 70s, my dad smoked some weed with my mom. My mother said she got so high that she thought she was going to die, and she never smoked weed again. I have also been that high, but I smoked weed again. So that's, but our lives, our realities are different. And so when my parents came from their respective homes in the South, they migrated too. The white people migrated from Europe. Sometimes the black people migrated within the country because America has always been several different countries. You have the liberal elitism that, well, Camelot is dead now, but the Kennedys maintain this liberal elite kind of mantra. So there's that. Then you have the South, which literally tried to form its own country. And then you have the West, which was just wild. No rules, anything goes. Go out there and look for gold, or go out there and be a prospector and just do, like, as more people went to the West, it just became more and more wild. And then all of a sudden you have what you have now in the West, uncontrolled gun laws, whatever. And so you can migrate within your own country. And African Americans had a series of migrations really to escape, to find less evil white people, or where the opportunity outpaced the fear of white people, right? So in the North, because factories needed labor, like you wouldn't have General Motors and Chrysler and Ford without black labor from the South. And they provided some protections because here in the North, we could join a labor union. There's no labor unions in the South. You guys know that, right? That's why all these foreign automakers have their plants in Kentucky and in Tennessee, because there's no labor. The South have been right to work states, which is very attractive for foreign investment, because if you make a Toyota and you make a Toyota in Japan, the American foreign policy, tariffs, that's the word, is going to make that Toyota so expensive, because if you have to bring the Toyota over to America, we're going to put a tariff on it. so that it's not competitive with American cars. Because remember, American car making, because not every country can make cars. That is the backbone of any manufacturing economy, the ability to make transportation. And so if you make a car in Japan and you want to sell it in America, well, you're competing with American economic interests. So we're going to put a tariff on that Japanese car. But if you build the Japanese car in America, then there is no tariff. It technically is an American car. Toyota and BMW don't have plants in Milwaukee because labor unions are strong here. You'd have to pay those auto workers a fair wage plus benefits. They're all in the South. So when Black people made their migrations to where there was labor and factory opportunity and then some on-the-job protection, like you weren't protected as an African-American, but your job was protected. If you had an issue on the job, which a lot of times had to do with race, but you have a union steward and you have some union representation, at least if your grievance was against management. So that attracted Black people here. But for some reason, there's a stereotype that we are lazy, and all we've been doing is running away from white people and running into where there's jobs and opportunity. It's a really weird thing. L.A. Thomas says, which Trump supporters did it? Because I can match energy. Let's find their addresses. We're not going to do that, L.A. Thomas. We don't, because a lot of those profiles, I don't even think they were real. And they're designed to get us really inflamed and enraged and threaten people. Here's the thing that I know. So I don't lose sleep over this. The real racist people, like the ones that are like, because that's what they do. They're just, they growl. They're not coming to a Black neighborhood. They're not patrolling over here. They're not going to protect property in the Black community. They're not going to do that. They always say that we're going to commit voter fraud and they're going to show up with their armed militias in the Black community. This is a benefit to living in a segregated community. First and foremost, I can play my music really loud and do all sorts of things, and my neighbors won't call the police. What'll happen is, like if I move to, I've had people tell me, oh, Sherwin, why do you live where you live? You should have lived. No, I don't want to live. I grew up in the suburbs. I prefer the city. Like if I play, and I've lived in this house for 16 years. I bought this house when I was in my 20s and not entirely in my right mind because, I would entertain here at my home. And I've made a lot of noise, I'm sure, over the years. And so the police have never been called on me for anything here at this house. There's a couple of times where I probably would have called the police on myself, but my neighbors are cool. So if I play my music real late one night, when you're having a good time at home, you don't realize that the rest of the neighborhood is not also enjoying hearing Ice Cube at 1 o'clock in the morning. You think everybody loves to hear Ice Cube at 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, I'll come to find out that's not the case. But what will happen is maybe the next night or the next weekend, my neighbors will be playing Ice Cube at 1 o'clock in the morning too. So it's just a thing we do. We're not going to call the police. We're just going to play our Ice Cube louder than you played yours, or whatever the case may be, whatever floats your boat. Could be Barry Manilow. I don't know what it is. Yeah, we don't call the police on each other. And so because there's, how do I even describe it? The white people that are very, very racist, what they'll do is they'll protect their own spaces from Black people. But they know that if they came to a Black community with their guns and their racist rhetoric, like I've never seen a white militia patrolling in my neighborhood because they know we'll leave them right where we find them if they dare come in our neighborhood. That's why they don't come. They know better. They're not stupid. Like we thought Trump was stupid. Trump ain't stupid. Trump knew about the coronavirus. These white militia folks, and when you think about it, and there's not a lot of examples that come to my mind, at least right away, but these white militia folks are shooting other white people. The situation in Kenosha with Kyle Rittenhouse, he killed 2 white people and maimed a 3rd. It's white people that are they're always more of a threat to each other than they are to us, because it's always the people in your proximity that you're likely to be, victimized by. And so when we talk about Black on Black crime, that's because Black people are in the same neighborhoods. We're corralled together. And so if you're going to rob somebody, you're not going to travel. Nobody commutes to rob. Just you rob in arm's reach. There was a situation earlier this week. We're in Waukesha, one of my favorite places to talk about, because it's everything wrong with American society because of what it's now reflective of, and the people that live there, and the history of Waukesha, and how it went from being, this stop on the Underground Railroad to this, bastion of anti-slavery, to the complete and total opposite. It is now the Confederacy. There's a guy in Waukesha. We talk about the fires and the burning and the looting and the protesting. Did you guys hear about this? There was a white guy that just set a white woman on fire walking her dog. Just burned her. Just set her on. Just threw some flammable liquid on her and literally set her on fire. And they always talk to the neighbors, don't they? If you're burning down a building to protest 400 years of oppression, that's one thing. If you're just setting a woman on fire because the guy thought that the woman was his cousin that he wanted to kill, that's a whole nother thing. But we don't talk about white on white crime. And I used to dedicate a lot of time to it until I realized that it fell on deaf ears. Just like trying to explain to Donald Trump supporters that Trump is killing you. He knew that the coronavirus would do what it was doing to people long before we had our first American casualty. He knew, and he chose to downplay it on purpose. But I can't tell people that. It's like I can't explain white on white crime to people. If you are white and if you are a child, you are much more likely to be physically, sexually abused, and also killed by another white person. They own the monopoly of murder and sexual abuse, some of the most heinous crimes of children. But we never say, oh, that white on white crime. We don't talk about that. And I don't waste my time because white people know. They don't want the larger society to know that some of the internal fighting amongst white people is worse than the disagreements between white and black. To an extent, the Civil War was about slavery. I don't think that white people said we're going to fight a war to free the blacks, because then when we came north after that, we weren't treated any better. In fact, some of the worst racial disparities that exist now when it comes to housing segregation is certainly in the north. White people have been fighting since they came here. They fought the British. They fight each other. They fought the Spanish. We've had all sorts of wars. And black people are just like, so what do you want us to do? Like, which side do you want? We've just been, for the same 400 years, we've just been trying to get a semblance of freedom and justice that we see everybody else enjoying. And so we're kind of all over the place. Some of us are Democrats because we think that's where the salvation is. Some of us are Republicans because, Jesus Christ, I don't know why. Some of us, don't pay attention to anything. Some of us just work really, really hard. And some of us try to excel. Some of us are just dedicated to our family and our friends. We're trying to fit in where it's least hazardous to our health. But now we come to find out that just being black is a health risk factor in and of itself. And I don't think the media has done a good enough job of explaining that, because during the pandemic is a way in which you can get more communication clarity, because a lot of America just doesn't know anything about black people still. And so when you have all these negative stereotypes about black people and you internalize them, and then you hear that we're dying at higher rates from the coronavirus, people think that black folks are just genetically inferior. No, we're not. Let me tell you why, and then I'm going to get out of here. The racial disparities that exist in healthcare. So if you look at just where black people are in American society, there's always a shortage of opportunity and of resources. So that goes without saying. I mean, not everybody, but by and large, when we're dealing with large percentages of African Americans, depending upon who, where, what, when, and why, your zip code is much more likely to have environmental pollutants, much more likely to have very, very crowded housing, much more likely to have intergenerational housing where the parents and the grandparents and the kids and the grandkids all live together. But also, black people are much more reliant on public transportation. Black people are also much more reliant on the wage economy to make our money to pay our bills, meaning that we're going to call people that work in these low wage jobs, oh my God, you're heroes. They're here. Let's say a prayer for our heroes that are stocking the grocery shelves. Do you know that we are calling those people heroes, but we will not pay them 15 goddamn dollars an hour because we know that they're going to die because they're risking overwhelming exposure to us from the coronavirus because they have to go to work every day. So instead of paying them and giving them the protections that they need, we just call them heroes. Celebrate your heroes that work at the grocery store. So many Black people have to rely on jobs in which you cannot work from home. You know how guilty I feel sometimes because I can just sit here in a yellow room and just do it. All of my professional duties, like 99% of them, I can do from this room. 1% I can do on the phone. There are people that don't have this option. And a disproportionate number of those people that have to go out into the world and interact with the public on a daily basis and work overtime are Black people. And that is why then we're coming back home to crowded houses and crowded living positions and living situations. And then we're getting on public transportation. And that is why the coronavirus is so likely to spread, plus our comorbidities. You know what kills Black men that we don't talk about? Kidney failure. You know how many dialysis clinics there are in my goddamn neighborhood? I'm 45 years old and I see a nephrologist because I don't want my kidneys to fail. I have known between my good friend Derek Mosley, who had a kidney transplant, I've known two other Black men. Both were in their 40s that died because of kidney failure. It's like it just doesn't stop. So I was like, God damn it, I'm gonna protect my kidneys. Tell you what. Did we accomplish anything today, guys? I feel like I just yelled at everybody. Did we get anything done today? I don't know. Maybe I'll watch this broadcast and probably delete it because who knows. But thank you for participating. So on Monday, we're going to migrate this platform over to YouTube. If you go to the forum Facebook group, there should be a pinned post on how you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. What I'll probably end up doing is just sharing the YouTube, there goes that damn feedback, sharing the YouTube link in the Facebook group. But if you want to still watch and participate and call me Sherman, you're going to have to do it from our YouTube channel. It's very easy. It's theforum2.com on YouTube. That's also our website. Check out our website if you are so inclined to do so. Also, the Minority Health Film Festival starts today, and you can buy tickets, and we hope that you do if you go to mkefilm/MHFF and check out some of the virtual events that they have going on, because if we don't have our health, then we don't really have much of anything else. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Join Milwaukee Film virtually for the Minority Health Film Festival, presented by the Froedtert and the Medical College of Wisconsin Health Network, taking place now through September 24th. Watch 50 films plus conversations about the health and well-being of families, communities, and institutions. Tickets are on sale now at mkefilm.org/MHFF.